Okay, welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals. And part of what we do, along with special guests, are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat, and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We've had a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see, which we'll go through. But if there's anybody here live on the call that would like to ask any questions, feel free to flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. Also, there's usually a bunch of other amazing SEOs on the call that usually share their perspectives and thoughts on the questions. I think that's one of the best things about SEO Office Hours, isn't just the four of us talking, but also everybody else sharing their ideas and thoughts. So please continue to do that. Like every week, with me today is Juliana Turnbull, also known as SEO Joe Blogs. Morning.
Hello, Mike. Hello, and hello to everyone that have joined us. Hi, Simon, Max, Albert, Deepak, Oluwatolibia, Benjamin Ishant, Andrew, Ikra. We have Jose, Daniel, Emily, and welcome everyone for watching the recording. Yeah, I'm very excited today. We have Emily and we have Olesia joining us as our special guest. So very welcome to you, Emily, Olesia.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And today is a very special episode because today is our 1 year anniversary. Thanks, Simon. It's our 47th episode. So it means that obviously there's a little bit shy of 52 episodes because there was a couple of holidays. And of course, we didn't do the show for Brighton SEO. So thank you very much, Mike, for taking over the reins from Jean Mueller and setting up the SEO office hours on Friday. We were being consistent every Friday since last year and inviting me to be a guest and then to be a co-host. I really appreciate it. It was great to be on the show, and a big thank you also to all our supporters for joining us and for people that have been messaging the questions. We've answered, I think, over how many questions? I would say if we have about seven.
Hundreds
Of questions. And we've had on average around 30 people join us each episode. This has been great. And there's been a lot of regular attendees too. Thank you everyone for supporting us. And if you want to join live in the show, we will be continuing in January. We've got 7 more sessions until the end of the year. And we will, of course, then be picking this up in January. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers that we have today, our special guests. We have Emily. Emily is the head of SEO at TMWI. It's an award-winning full-service media agency. She leads a team there. She leads a team for organic strategy, technical SEO, as well as content production, and they also do digital PR. She oversees client relationships across SEO, and she drives innovative strategies to create these different online experiences that helps the brands dominate the search results. And because of her as well, she's also led the TMWIT to win numerous search and digital awards. And herself, she has received the Women in Business Innovation Award in 2021. Emily, you sound very busy, and congrats on that award.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. But we have a little collection of trophies in our SEO team that we've been very excited about and very much enjoying piling up in the agency.
And how long have you been leading the team there for, or how long have you been at the company for?
So in agency years, I think it's an eternity. I've been there nearly 7 years, which is a very long time in one agency. But yes.
Wow.
Yeah, long stint.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And hello, Olesia. Thank you very much for joining us today. Olesia is an SEO entrepreneur from Ukraine with a background in media, advertising, and a passion for tech SEO. When she's not doing SEO, she not only reads about SEO, writes about it in her community channels and or her website, Fajala. She listens to SEO webinars, podcasts. She speaks on SEO events herself. She dreams about it. She always prefers the practice over theory. And Olesia, you've been part of many webinars with Anton as well. If you could elaborate a little bit more about some of your webinars that you've been co-hosting with him.
He's organizing charity events for the shelters, animal shelters, cat and dog shelters, very small ones, which are not funded centrally and which are not actually registered anywhere. But those people, they just take care of the animals that appeared on the street or are severely injured or ill, or they are abandoned by their owners. So what he does, he creates these webinars and online conferences so that we can accumulate funds that then go to these shelters. And because it's SEO community, one of the best communities and verticals in the world, so we've got lots of support, and we always have it a big success, and we get this money and we are able to help all these animals, and very grateful for him to let me be a part of these calls and also do my best at this. So if you see us anywhere, please go support us also. It's not always about money, but even sharing and like being there is also helpful a lot.
Thank you. I've just shared this one, the SEO for Paws, that was covered in Search Engine Journal, and it was promoting the event that you had, I believe it was a couple of months ago. Just checking the date.
It was so good. I watched that. It was so good.
Thank you.
September 25th, so just over 5 or 6 weeks ago. Thank you very much, Olesia and Emily, for joining us today on our 47th episode. And thanks everyone for joining us too. Our regulars that have been signed in and also those watching the recording. I think that's it. Mike, over to you. We've got loads of questions today.
Right, we've got so many questions. I'm going to cheat a little bit today and read off my screen, if that's all right, just because I'm not in the office. And yeah, that'd be a bit easier. Okay, first question. Have you had much experience of poor LCP and FCP? So that stands for largest contentful paint and first contentful paint, causing major issues. Obviously, it's not ideal, but the move to using a big hero image has pushed down our core web vitals from good to poor category. They are served optimally, and browsers are able to select different source sets. So the only way to improve it without changing the design would be to force heavily compressed images, which will look rubbish. They said something else. So do we have any advice or any other thoughts on how to help? Who would like to kick off?
I may start. And
Alicia, go for it.
Everyone can add after that. I'd suggest not compressing them too much, because sometimes the issue might be somewhere else. For example, you might be using JavaScript to upload the images, and that may cause a big delay in your core web vitals and in your speed. And another aspect is that you might be, for example, using in WordPress, where they have this lazy load on every image on your website, and sometimes it's not what you want to do. You sometimes don't want to postpone the loading of the heaviest or biggest image. And another thing that you might want to use the preload function, so maybe to optimize it a bit. So I'd look into the code and see what exactly causes the issue, aside from the image being very big. And of course, if it's very big, maybe you'd want to do something else. Sometimes the hero images may be uploaded as background images, which also pushes them back, and they start loading at the very end. So just look why it happens in the code. Don't look at the, as they mentioned, then that they use SRC. So maybe, and the source set, so maybe it's not the background, but anyway, just look if you have the source and everything else in hand, so that it's all organized correctly. So I'd look into the code more.
Amazing advice. Emily, do you have anything to add? I don't.
No, that was so thorough. No, really good advice.
Great. Joe, what about you? Anything to add?
No, that was very good advice. Just a note from Simon. He said that P and FCP is not a major ranking factor, but it might be a tipping point between your content and the competition. However, that is not a reason to not sort these out. Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive answer, Alicia.
Okay, cool. Next question. Do you have any thoughts on the latest quick view button for recipes and potentially other use cases? And so basically, Google has been testing a quick view button for recipes, which basically means that you don't need to leave the search results. Has anybody used it? Does anybody have any thoughts? Emily, go for it. You look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I really love this question because it's such an interesting way to see how Google is looking at the user experience in terms of the search results. I think we've worked with recipe sites before with my agency, and we know that there is a lot of questions about what should the content length be. And we are seeing, especially with bloggers and things, that they publish these really long recipe articles which have so much kind of preamble and history, and that it can sometimes feel like when you get onto one of those pages, you're scrolling forever to actually get to the recipe. And I think what we're seeing when Google testing this quick view button, I know it's a test and it may not roll out, but is Google pulling out the bit that people are looking to get to, which is the ingredients and the method. And I think if we can look at the things Google is testing with betas and take learnings from what they're trying to achieve, and seeing they're presumably testing that to see what the user engagement and experience is, and if that means that there's lower bounce rates, less frustration. So I think anybody who has a recipe site should be thinking about looking at the structure of their content to make sure that it's answering the actual question behind the intent behind the search and the need for the users, because recipes as a sector within Google have been building up in length over time, and Google testing a short, just getting the answer to the question feature is something I think we should take learnings from if you have content in that space. If you want to put all of that context and history and tips and additional content at the end for people who are really interested, that's a different thing to putting it up front and making users scroll for what feels like an eternity to get to the bit they were originally looking for.
Amazing. Joe, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know this one, but I just had a couple of comments so far, actually, so I can share them. So Simon says, as a cook, it's great. As a website owner, a disaster. Why don't people want to know about his grandma's trip to the field in 1953? Mansi was saying that frustration is a word when checking those blogs. Or be creative and include it in between. It may be similar to what you were saying at the end, Emily. Yeah, interesting.
Olesia, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on this, or how it could impact other parts of the web?
It now means that in the future you potentially need to reach out to Google to be included into the search results, really. So it's a problem for many people who want to start out maybe and get their blogs and get their experience on the web. And of course, Google is not obliged to showcase anyone, but people are used to Google at the moment. So I see it as a problem more because not all blog owners were contacted for this feature, and all that were contacted, they had to sign an NDA. So we don't know if they are paid or not, how much do they get paid. I see a conflict of interest potential in the future as well, because we don't know how they chose these blog owners and these particular blogs, and why them, why not something else. And I don't know, I think it could be a big problem potentially with all these trials going on about Google anyway. So
great. Let's just jump. I've got nothing's bad. Usually you can't shut me up, but let's jump to the next question. We're also flying through the questions, guys, which is amazing.
That's good.
Might get through them all. Okay, this question is, I've got a request to put together a full 12-month SEO strategy for a client's site. It's a good project, but building out a proposal alone will take a few days minimum. What if the client just takes the strategy and I'm left out of pocket? Do I go all in and present the entire plan? Has anybody had success charging up front for a pitch? Or shall I go with a partial strategy to protect my ideas and work, even if it may look unprepared? Joe, do you want to kick off with that one?
Yeah, so I'll just start sharing it in the chat. Lots of questions in here. So first of all, when anyone does a pitch, if you're working as an agency, when I was working agency side, we did the pitches outside of our paid work. Now, of course, if someone is working freelance and they don't have that sort of maybe luxury. So yes, it's taking the time from their paid work. Putting together a full SEO strategy for 12 months, I don't think you should actually go through the details of that, because first of all, you don't actually have access to the Google Search Console. You don't have access to their analytics. So what I would do is you put together a proposal and highlight a few things that you would include in that. But of course, I wouldn't go into the details and put an actual full detailed proposal of what you would do without actually, of course, signing a contract and getting that signed off. They said, should I go with a partial strategy to protect my work, even though it might look unprepared? It is not unprepared. You would prepare yourself you would have a look at their competition, you'd have some nuggets of information to share with them, but it's totally expected and understood from their end as well that you're not going to share the full details without having a contract in place. If you have already done this proposal and then you've won it, that's great. And then, of course, you can go into further details and then say, okay, based on what we've discussed, we can then go and give you an actual tailor-made proposal. So no, I wouldn't go and all present the whole plan because you don't know it. You don't have their GA4 and you don't have their Google Search Console. And I would say nobody should expect you to do that.
Great. Emily, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Joe on that one. None of the pitching and proposals is ever paid for, so it is really difficult to invoice a client for the preparation work. But I think if you make it clear in the proposal when you give it to them that the first part of it is going to be an audit and making the plan, making whatever roadmap or however you want to describe it, because you actually being able to go and get those details as part of the paid work is important. The proposal is an outline of the sort of work that you would do, but it doesn't need to be the detail. But I would say from an agency experience, sometimes we have talked to people, especially in the commercial team, who say, don't tell them anything. They could just run off and implement it. But I think that's probably an unfounded concern, because if they're reaching out for help for a proposal for a freelancer or an agency or someone to support them, it's because they can't do it themselves. So even if you gave them, these are all the URLs we need to optimize this content, they're not going to be able to go away and do that. It's a resource thing, it's an expertise thing. The fact that they have asked for proposals means that they know they can't do it. So I wouldn't worry about them taking the ideas and running off, but it's more about you making sure that you're paid for the actual work. So not for the proposal, but for the work of making the plan, identifying the pages, the detail behind it. That should be part of the paid proposal.
Amazing. Olesia, do you have anything to add?
I always end up doing lots of work for free, actually, so I'm not a very good person to ask about that because I just start to looking at the site and feeling what I want to say right away, and I'm always given the console in advance. It's not a problem for me to have access to all these things, unless it's a very big company where they have this procedure and process. So I don't know, I'm not the best person for that. But what I try to do is that I try to limit how much time I spend on that, on this speech or whatever. And I tell in advance how much my services cost and that it might take me potentially more, and that I'm only spending 1 hour, say 1 or 2 hours for this one. And if I need to spend more, then I'd prefer to settle up some payment, preferably for doing that. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, I totally agree with everybody. I think I use a pitch as an opportunity to showcase what I've done before and to meet the client and hopefully get across that if I think that I can help by the examples that I use. Like Joe said, I've usually got a few nuggets of information from doing a bit of research into their business and their site. But often the case studies that I share with them are of things where I could have only come up with those ideas by doing the proper research into their business and their search competitors and so on. So I make that a part of the pitch where I explain that actually you don't want me to come up with your full strategy within a few hours. You want me to spend some time coming up with some ideas that are hard to replicate. And here are some examples of ones where I've done that. And that tends to work, but it doesn't always. I had quite a big pitch last year and it was between my company and another, and the reason we didn't get it is because they'd outlined exactly what they were going to do, but I wasn't prepared to do that because I honestly feel like, particularly with such a big brand, you need that time to really investigate their customers and their business and the kind of market and the search environment. So sometimes that approach that I've just said doesn't work. So if you do that and you lose the business, I'm sorry. But we're only a small company. So a bit like Joe was saying, I don't have the time to put 3 or 4 days to putting together an amazing pitch unpaid, basically, because I have clients that do pay. So I haven't got, I guess it's not a nice position to be in. But yeah, that's my take on it. Great. Joe, do we have any comments from anybody?
Yeah, I just said, I have one from Monty saying that she agrees with me that she's going to say that. Also, you wouldn't be able to know everything about the company, of course, like the processes and things like that, because you don't have access to that. So, yeah, I think I want to just get to the point and make the point that person is not looking unprepared if they don't do like a full strategy. It's totally fine.
Yeah, but I liked what Amy said about putting together that kind of roadmap of this is what I'll do to create that strategy for you, and making that very clear in that part of the pitch. Yeah, we do a similar thing. Okay, great. Do you know what? When I read this question, it actually reminds me of one we had, I think, about 2 months ago, which was around preparing for your first however many days in a job interview. And pitching is quite similar to that. I think it was the company had asked them to put together like the first 60 or 90 days. I can't remember. And they were like, should I do that? And they're just going to just do it without me. Yeah, but very kind of similar advice. Okay, next question. I have a website targeting roughly 40 broad topics with about 5 to 15 blog posts per topic. If only a few posts are performing well within each topic, what should we do? If I don't take action, could this be causing topic cannibalization or damaging the entire website?
Oh, interesting. I love questions like this because this is where you can start to do some proper investigation. I think without knowing the site and the topics and how different, what they mean by broad topics, it is difficult to judge, but I would say this is where you need to start investigating. What do the blog posts that are performing have in common with each other? Is it a specific search intent that you're well suited to ask? Is it a topic you've clearly demonstrated expertise on? Is it the formats? What do they have that the other blog posts don't have? So I think I would be trying to dig into the data to say, okay, why are these ones performing and what do they have that the other ones that aren't performing don't have? Because yeah, it could be they're more closely related to your business than you think. Some of the other topics are too broad. I think where websites are trying to do too much, they end up spreading themselves too thinly. So it would be, what are you actually trying to be known for and be the expert here? Because it's often people are worried about things like cannibalization or damaging it in Google's eyes, but actually, is that content right for your users? Do they resonate? The blog posts that aren't performing in Google, are they resonating with your users on social or on your email marketing? Because I think we're actually trying to get Google to judge, is this content right? When you should be thinking about it from a user's perspective. Is this content what people want to read? So I would suggest, yeah, some proper auditing in terms of why the content pieces that are performing are doing that, what is good about them, and then what is causing the other pieces not to perform. Is it a relevance thing? Is it a formats thing? Is it just that it's not the right content for your audience? So yeah, hopefully that just gives someone, whoever wrote this question, just a bit of a starting point for some reflection on your content.
Amazing. Olesia, do you have anything to add?
I made a calculation, like a very small. So roughly there are 150 pages on the website that they want to rank, and around 80 of them are performing quite well. So I think it's a very good result, actually. And especially if the topics are very broad and not really connected with each other, I think it's brilliant results. If they want to rank all their pages, they just go and look at it by page. Issue maybe they just need to tweak their titles. I don't know. I'd see if they think that they might be cannibalizing topics, whatever that means. That might be that they are afraid of creating duplicate content or content that is somewhat similar to what they have with their well-performing pages. So they maybe want to merge them, for example, or rewrite it with another angle or whatever else. So I think I'd look into that maybe they'd want to expand, look into the type of content that is already performing well. And maybe that's some special format for them. So maybe they want to expand this special format and just research it a bit more. So I think it might be just on-page SEO, simple strategies that can help in this case. And that is it. But I think that it's already a very good website based on their description.
Great. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we had a similar question a while ago, just when the term of a cannibalization. I wouldn't underestimate Google Search Console. So Google Search Console will then tell you what pages may be trying to rank for the same sort of topic. So do go into your Google Search Console and look at that and see if there is anything that you can change. Also, when they said around 5 to 15 blog posts per topic, we haven't talked about this here, but have a think about how those blog posts maybe support called the pillar pages. How have you organized the content? John's mentioned about internal linking as well in here. How are you connecting all these pages together? How are other people finding it? Is it just through the category, or are you actually interlinking and showing for people to have the read more? So I would take a step back and have a look, as I said, at Google Search Console, see about where you may find these sort of pages competing with each other. And if they are competing with each other, then you may think maybe I might need to just take that content and put it or add it to the actual blog post and get rid of that one. Or it also may help you with what's missing in the future, and that would actually help you for planning for 2025.
When I read this question, one of the thoughts I had was just around what they mean by performing well. Is that rankings? Is that views? Is that inquiries or sales? What does that actually mean? Because if it's down to views, then maybe you're not getting as many views for some of the posts as you are others. Sometimes there isn't the search volume for some topics that there are others. And obviously there's the external environment as well. So maybe some topics are more competitive than some others. So that if it is down to that, like if it is down to views, for example, it might just be that although the search volume isn't as high and therefore you don't get as many clicks to the website, it doesn't mean that content's bad. It just might mean that there are fewer people looking for it. So part of the question was around, will this damage the entire website if they don't take action? And providing the content's good, I personally don't think there is an issue here, unless you are what Joe was talking about in terms of cannibalizing and just have the same post written a different way, then that, I guess you're diluting those pages and the performance. But I agree with Olesia in terms of, it sounds like you've got a good site, and I would just carry on optimizing and creating for those parts of the website that make the business money. If it's a commercial website, yeah, like obviously if it's about rankings, maybe some pages are ranking really well and then others aren't at all, then, and there is search volume there, then of course I would look at your search competitors and see if they're offering different advice or points of difference, that maybe there's some data there or things like that. And I would look at improving what you're doing. But it doesn't feel like, if you're worried that your website is going to, when you say damn it, I worry about the word damage. If you think your website's going to fall out of the search results tomorrow, I don't think it is. Basically, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. Just keep making it better, I would say. Joe, do we have any comments?
Yeah, we just have a couple of comments that he might need to, or he may need to optimize the underperforming posts. That, going back to the analyze, maybe why are they underperforming? And also just look at the timescale as well. These underperforming posts, were they more recent? Also think about seasonality as well, and have a think about if that would have been a factor. Mama's talking about identifying any of the low performing content. Yes, using Google Search Console. He's also mentioned about merging some similar content as well together if you're looking at duplicate. But really take this as an opportunity you can have a plan. We're now coming to the end of the year. So think about, okay, what you want to do in 2025? What are the posts that are doing quite well? Maybe you want to actually see them grow more, and maybe you can focus on those topics. So try not to maybe spread yourself too thin. I think there was in the question itself about broad. I think broad, do you mean it's not related to your business? Monty was asking. Just have a think about what you want to do for 2025. But yeah, it seems as Olesia said, anyway, that you seem to be ranking quite well. But, and as Mike said, your site will not fall out of the search results because of a few not performing as well posts.
Great. Okay, next question. Carl, we're flying through them today.
Yeah, this is number 5.
Okay, next question. Is there a way to understand AI overviews in Google Search Console? I don't think there is. I'm in Google Search Console all the time, and maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think there is. You were smiling there. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, everyone is constantly asking them to do that, at least the way the Bing did it, but no way that we can do that now. Maybe there can be some things that indirectly may point out that there's something happening there. For example, you are ranking as you were, and then suddenly you have less clicks, and I don't know, more impressions but less clicks or something like that, but the rankings didn't, nothing was there. So it's sometimes a sign that Google added some feature to the keyword and to the associated keywords, and that might be one of the AI overviews. And if you are not presented there, or if the answer doesn't mean that person needs to go to your website, you might actually see that by losing clicks. And also maybe if you use some tool, I don't know, third-party tools, they start to show AI overviews, so you might want to connect them with APIs or something and track like that, but not directly in Google Search Console anyway. So maybe I'm also wrong.
Great. Joe, Emily, are we wrong?
No, I don't think so. It would be nice for Google to add that in for sure, in the way that it's added some other features in, like for the products grid has been added in the merchant listings. But yeah, hopefully they'll get around to that. But in the meantime, it's a bit of debugging between what data you can get out of a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush, where you can isolate the keywords where they found the AI overviews. They're still rolling those features out from the data that we've seen. But yeah, I think there's going to be a conversation there with Google about how they anonymize that data, because if people are using more kind of personalized keywords that are personal to them, and that's triggering a lot more AI overviews, it's likely we won't be able to get that at a keyword level just because of Google's need to anonymize the search data.
Yeah,
so yeah,
true.
it's a bit of data stitching for the time being, at least.
Yeah, some of the things I put into ChatGPT, I don't think I want the world knowing that.
Don't want that in
Now you're wondering, it's nothing crazy. I'm just kidding. Joe, what about you? Any thoughts before we jump on the next question?
No, for Google Search Console, no, but I just shared a link about from SEO Clarity that they had. Sorry, my voice is still gone. But this was released just a couple months ago, actually, in August. They have a ranking report that shows which keywords trigger AI overviews. SEO Clarity has AI overview opportunities, or they had introduced them over the past year. That press release goes into a bit more detail. So they can crawl the Google's new AI overviews, but in terms of Google Search Console, no. I'm not familiar with how you can actually get the information.
Great. Okay, so it's a no in terms of Google Search Console, but there are other sources that you can go to. Okay, next question. What do you say when pitching a story to a journalist or blogger? Emily, you have a digital PRs in your company, right? And your
Yes.
team?
Yes, we do. It's such a good question. And I'm going to give that classic SEO answer of it depends. But I think the really important thing here is that you are not sending out what feels like cold calling on email. It can't feel like you've just thrown out a press release to everyone, you've sent them the same story. Our rule with digital PR is that we would rather have less coverage but better quality. So it's about picking your target sites really carefully, researching the sites themselves, the journalists. And what I would say is, when you pitch the story to them, we always stick with the inverted pyramid thing of focus on the most important bit first. You can add context later, but just what the story is, why it's newsworthy, why you think it's a fit for them, and just make sure that's at the top of the pitch. You can follow up by all means, but I would say if you've sent 2 emails and haven't responded, don't send a third one. There's nothing worse than being chased about a thing that isn't relevant for you. So yeah, it's your shortlist in terms of the sites you want to target and why you are targeting them, why you think it's relevant for them. And then it's about just making the email really quick. They can see it, they can see what the story is about. They don't have to go through loads of, I'm really not a fan of fake niceties. I see that sometimes on emails where they say, oh, I really loved your recent article about this. Not a fan of that. Just get to the point. We're all just people doing our jobs here. I don't want to be, oh, I read your recent article about, no, you didn't. Yeah. And then the other thing that's really worked for us is making sure that your story has some form of data in it. So it's actually news beyond just a comment. You can offer things that journalists often need to get stories over the line. So it could be some images or creative that they can use that can sometimes help just make it easier. And you can also, if it's a big publication, one you really want coverage in, you can offer them, you can give them a quote from the spokesperson for your brand, but you can also offer them, I can put you in touch with them if you want an exclusive quote or you've got any follow-up questions. So you offer them a bit of the story that is beyond the press release that is custom to them. So yeah, there's lots of different tactics you can use, but we really also try and focus on the relationship with journalists. So if you are working for a brand in the same sector, you should have a list of journalists you're regularly just reaching out to, sharing things with them, and asking for their feedback as well, because it's not just to send them a story when you want something. It's also if they've got a story and where maybe they need a quote, then they'll reach out to you. So it's really focusing on that relationship as much as possible. So it takes some dedicated resource, but the whole point of any earned media is it's earned. So it does take some work. It's not a thing you can just plug into a tool and blast out to journalists and get coverage from. Yeah, it's a bit of a process, but when it works, it's really worth it.
I loved your point about the sort of email outreach. I really enjoyed reading your blog post on this, published on this day, on this website, just using those kind of dynamic terms. Olesia, what about you? The question is about, what do you say when pitching a story to a journalist or blogger? Do you do any kind of link building that?
I do, but I don't do it like that. And I have people who do pitch instead of me. So I'm very happy about that because it's what I hate doing actually. But I have my own community, like in Telegram and all these kind of things. So I'm often pitched by other people that want to get their content in my group, for example, or in my channel or everywhere else. And what I can say is that I will always accept content that is helpful for the community. And that's what most pitches are lacking. So they never showcase how it's helpful for anyone else except for them selling their service or their tool or whatever else. And sometimes the content that they want to share is pure ads, and I don't accept ads, for example, and all these kind of things. So if I were to pitch instead of them, I'd start with how it's helpful for the audience of the person where you want to share your content, so what they will get from it. And I'll try to make it as less salesy as possible and without any ads inside of it. So it will help, because if the content is helpful, people will share it themselves if they find it even somewhere. And if it's not helpful, nothing will help you to do that, to push it forward. So it's just no brainer. If you have something really valuable, people will share it. So it's not what you say, but it's like how you say and how you present what you are doing and what you are sharing.
Great.
I like what you said. Sorry, I'm just going to say, I like what you were saying about, Olesia was saying about like the community. And I like what you said, Emily, about saying, don't say, I just read your article, because yeah, most of the time maybe you didn't. Those are great points. I would also say as well that emphasize what Emily said around having data, because without data, you're just another person with opinion. And back to what Lesia was saying about making sure that it's useful for the readers. I know we're talking about journalists and bloggers here as well, but sometimes people don't always have the time to get that earned media, to have that relationship. There's a lot of influencers, so people that are working on Instagram only, Reels, that may get you the exposure that you would like without maybe investing a lot of time at the beginning. Of course, it's a paid method, but it's very obvious on people's Instagrams that it's an ad. And then you can maybe get a bit more buy-in from the team to show the visibility. And then maybe internally you can actually then allocate more time to actually do what Emily was mentioning, because it is, as she said, like an earned relationship, and it ties into as well perhaps community. Like Olesia said, it's not something that you're going to work with that person once. Hopefully you'd actually want to work with them for the long term. But yeah, that takes time and depends on your resource internally, if you have that moment, if you have that currently, or you might need to build up to that.
Great. I love all the advice so far. It's been amazing. I think one of the things I quite like doing, or people that I've worked with, I try and encourage, is people actually trying to get on the phone and pitch stories to journalists rather than just through social media or email. And I think when you do that, I've been on many phone calls myself where pre-warning, sometimes, despite them being journalists, sometimes they can be quite rude. And I think you've just got to get to the point very quickly. I think what Olesia was saying is make sure that you're putting something forward to them that's actually going to be really useful to their readers. And then basically what Emily was saying is focus on those journalists that will care, your A-listers or whatever you call it, top of the pyramid, try and get in front of them in some way. And when we do, I've spent quite a lot of time with digital PRs just practicing what we're going to say on the phone before we jump on the phone, where we'll start with a hook. If it's about data, you might start with, did you know this? And hopefully it's of interest to them. I try and get as much into the first 15 seconds as possible, because otherwise you're going to get the phone put down on you. And then we usually have 3 follow-up points with why this matters, why it's interesting to them and their readers. followed by, can we send over the press release or whatever it is that you want to send to them? But I think doing that practice and really thinking, we usually have about 10 points, but we'll pick the 3 that are most relevant to those journalists, and that gives the story credibility and all the stuff that Joe was saying around data, making sure that it's not just an opinion, that there's something there that is newsworthy. I think the most important thing when you're pitching something is that it is actually newsworthy and it's a good story. I think if it is, and you manage to get it in front of the right person, I always like to go into something thinking there's no reason why they wouldn't cover this. And when I jump on the phone, I'm doing them a favor by telling them about it, because I'm going to make their job easier. And obviously having all the other stuff to go with it. So things like media, so whether that's videos or photos or some sort of visualization of data, something that makes it really easy for them to print a story or put something forward. And I liked what Joe said about building that relationship with them. So it's not just this one-off. If your client or your company, if this is an A-lister, I would try and go for coffee with them as well and find out more about them and what they cover and what they want from a company like yours. You want to be the first person they come to when they think of that. Yeah, I love what everybody else said. I just wanted to add the bit about, I think actually getting on the phone, it's horrible. If you've ever done it, you get very used to them saying, no, not interested. But you just need to keep going, because you will find there are some, if you've got the right story and the right outreach list, you will find some people want to cover it. And actually, you're more likely to find what they want if you're on the phone having that conversation with them than if you just blast out an email or something like that. If you can't get a hold of them on the phone, usually go and find them on social and go have a conversation that way to start the conversation, say, can I jump on the phone with you? And same with bloggers as well, by the way. I think you really stand out if you phone a blogger versus if you just email them. And yeah, just remember, despite the fact that you may speak to however many rude journalists, they are still like humans at the other end. So don't let the last call ruin your next call by feeling like everybody's guards up. Something that's really helpful if you're not used to pitching to journalists, something that I've done with digital PRs that I've trained up before is I'll pick a story that's totally inappropriate for a newspaper. So it might be one like the Times, and it might be a really fun story. And I might just get them to pitch to someone like that and not say the company name, but just to get that practice of somebody saying, we're not interested, go away. So just doing a little bit of practice like that can be really helpful, so that when you are there to tell your story, yeah, you say it really well. Joe, do we have any comments?
We have a couple actually, so thanks very much. Yeah, Amonti's saying 100% Olesia, create good content first, then distribute it. She said that she recently discussed community as a marketing tactic. It can be hard to actually get this bought into the company. She found that it was pushed back on her. And Simon was saying that it can be hard, of course. Yes, it takes a long time, but it is important to have that. And that's it really from now. No, we have some great ones. We've got 6 questions. We've got 10 minutes left. Do we have time for another question before our regular question?
But I was just going to add, actually, also just trying to bring your story to life if you can in some way. Sending things via the post is quite a good way of doing things. I've done that quite a few times, where you bring your press release to life. I won't tell you what I sent, but they've definitely made sort of breakfast shows or journalists notice it. And the other thing is put on some live events if they're local journalists, not just meeting them individually, but thinking about ways you can bring your press release to life and get them to come and experience it and invite them down. Done quite a few of those type of things. Simon's just said cake. That totally works, by the way. If you're trying to build relationships with journalists, we've done many cake drops where we've just, we're just in the area. Do you mind if we pop in with some cupcakes? And everybody wants cake.
Yeah, John said journalists love a care.
Everybody wants cake.
And journalists love a care package. Yes, that's true. Of course. Yeah, you're never too old for cake. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next question. There were 2 quite similar questions. So one is, my question, is it okay to have a blog post website only, or do we need to add categories for better reach? And then somebody else has asked, is it okay to have a blog with only one category, or do we need to add more categories? Does it look like a starter blog if it only has one? Who'd like to kick off? Emily, you look like you're about to say something.
Oh man, it's such an interesting question. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking like a starter website if it's a new website. First of all, it's not a negative thing to be new and a fresh content publisher. I think I would question when we're talking about categories. I am a big fan of organizing your content, of thinking about how it's grouped, how it's structured, how you're making clusters. And I know Joe was talking earlier about pillar pages. We would definitely recommend that, especially planning for growth. So if you're going to keep publishing over the next couple of years, is then putting that structure in place now so that you will have categories for the content to go into and to be organized in a way that is useful for users. But in terms of just making category pages, they're not automatically landing pages for topics. It's just like a listing page where it's got the category's title is this, and here's all the articles about it. So sometimes it's about thinking about that landing page experience, if that's going to be the way in, or a kind of navigation page. It's not just making your standard WordPress category page and hoping that will rank, because it probably won't. It's just thinking about if that is like a starter pillar page format or any other way that kind of gives people a way into the topic and then links off to the more detailed content depending on their interests. It's more thinking about, for me, the category structure should do that. It should be helping people navigate and find the content once they're on your site, rather than the category pages necessarily being a landing point. But yeah, that's how I would be thinking about it. And also just factoring in that future proofing. We've done this with clients every couple of years as they grow, actually thinking about what should the new structure be. Sometimes they get categories with 30, 40, 50 articles, and you think, okay, actually, this is way too much. It needs breaking out into smaller groups, and it needs that journey breaking down a bit more. So yeah, planning for what kind of content you're going to publish and then putting those categories in place now just means you're set up and you're not going to have to restructure and redirect a bunch of URLs in the next couple of years.
Amazing. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of ontological approach. I think that if you do it right, the ontologies and SEO work better than backlinks or whatever else. I think that categories are some kind of synonym for taxonomies. And if you organize your content into these taxonomies properly, it gives Google a very good idea about the structure of your blog, of what you are doing, and what you actually deliver. You can enhance whatever you want to sell more or whatever you want to highlight in terms of your business. And it really will help you even to rank better, and for Google and for other engines to understand your content better as well. And now with the emergence of these LLMs and all these kind of things that always scrape your content for that, this will also help them to understand into which index or into which source to add you. Big LLMs are good, but they always put you into these topical clusters where they pass the data to give to their users. And you want to be included into those that are relevant to you and to people actually asking questions in these chatbots and in Google. And you want these to be the source when they are looking for answers. And that's partially why you create a blog, right? Especially when we don't have these blue links in search and all these kind of things. You want your data from your blog to be helping people who are searching for the information to potentially then use your service or buy your product. So I'd look into that from this point of view and how to organize it taxonomically, so to say, or ontologically, if you will, to get it better. So one category is usually not enough, but also look at it from this point of view that if you have very few posts and lots of categories, it will make your blog look kind of thin or poor quality in terms of like parsing it. So you don't want to have very few posts and you don't want to have too many, because it will dilute the idea somehow. Also, I'm seeing that people mix two concepts often. So they think that, especially in WordPress or somewhere else, you have these tags and you have these categories. And some people don't understand what's the difference and how to use them. And so what people are doing, they add all their keywords into the tags and they make them indexable. And then they have these categories that are also targeting their major keywords, sometimes conflicting with their commercial pages. So you want to avoid that. So you really want to structure it in terms of category they belong to. Then you don't want them to be in conflict with what you're doing commercially. And also you don't want just to make lots of these pages, because it's thin content and they'll be duplicate and they are of no use to your users as well. So you'll be starting I suggest to be very mindful about that and do this research, how to build the ontology of your website and implement that in your categories of your blog.
Amazing advice. Joe, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing else to add. I just want to say we've got some great comments, comments from Emily and Olesia, and also in our chat. Simon's talking about if you don't have a long-term strategy for your content, then wait until things fall into normal categories. Umama was talking about it depends on your specific goals and content strategy. Waleed said, while starting a new website, it might be better to start with one category and build it out and expand later. Website taxonomies change organically over time, Simon says, so do a content audit annually. And I just also want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us. I didn't say this earlier, that's been joining us, not live watching us after the show. Click as you've enjoyed the show and subscribe to the YouTube channel and come and join us live too. Go to goodsignals.com/SEO-office-hours.
Great. We are massively running out of time. We've got like a minute left. I was just going to add, just on that question, that I think it's really good that that they've obviously started a site and they're focusing on the content first and actually hopefully writing really good posts and content before kind of building out all these category pages and have very little actual kind of content linked to them. So I think it's good to perfect your writing and blogging before setting up the website in that way, because if you're new to it, you might end up changing things very quickly and then changing again and so on. Okay, we've got a final question and we'll have to be really quick, which is, what are you most excited about from an SEO perspective? Emily, what are you most excited about at the moment from an SEO perspective?
I am really enjoying what Google is doing in the product space, in the shopping space. It's trying to take on Amazon and bring back that kind of shopping journey. It's using AI to organize that. I think it tells us a lot about search behavior, and it gives for retailers just a really interesting space to be doing some great tests with their product pages.
Amazing. Olesia, what are you most excited about at the moment?
I'm most excited that we're shifting towards that time when maybe we won't need to have a website and we'll need to optimize our information and the data and how we're presented and how people can actually find information about us without having a website or having a very small website. So I'm thinking about that in terms that we might have less spam and we actually might be more effective in finding something or presenting what we have to our users.
Great. Anybody watching who's a web designer will be panicking as they listen to that. Joe, what are you most excited about from an SEO perspective?
I'm always excited about events, and there has been the SEO office hours in Spanish that was recently launched, so excited to watch that. I didn't watch it live, but I will be watching the recording and hopefully being able to join next Thursday as well.
Great. We'll finish there. Thank you so much to everybody that joined us live. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you, Joe, for co-hosting. Thank you those who are watching afterwards on YouTube. And thank you to those who submitted the questions. We'll be back next Friday with 2 other special guests. Have an amazing weekend and see you next week.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Everyone.
1 year.
Yay. Bye. Have a lovely weekend.
Bye.
Bye.